everyone. Welcome back with my favorite divorce-focused financial advisor and yours, Jennifer Lee. She is the founder of Modern Wealth, a Sarasota-based financial firm with a focus on helping individuals experiencing transitions such as divorce, like yourself. Jennifer's been on the show a bunch of times. Today, we're going to talk about something a little bit different and a question that I get all the time, which is how does divorce impact your business? Like if you own your own business, if your spouse owns their own business, if you co-own a business, oh my God, what are you supposed to do? And what are the impacts? So, Jennifer, welcome back to the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I always love to be on your show. Well, divorce and owning a business. Two complexities in and of themselves alone are complex. So where do you want to start? You want to start with
Yeah.
you're both in the business or one of you has a business?
Let's start with we both have we run it together. Uh Now what?
Right. So I guess we start with how amicable is the divorce? Is it,
Right?
I love you, but I don't want to be married to you. I respect you, but I don't want to, be married to you, but we can still work together. Or is it contentious and I don't like you and I don't want to be anywhere near you? So,
And I don't trust you.
and I don't trust you. I mean,
I don't trust
that's
you financially, right? Yeah.
is,
Right. So that is a very important distinction.
yeah,
Let's start with the former because that's a little easier, I
nicer,
guess.
right?
Nicer, right? So, yeah, you guys are
So
amicable. You guys everything else is on the up and up. You trust each other financially. The business is good, but now we're dividing things. Are we dividing this business too?
right. So if you're 50-50 owners or 51-49 owners, you can work together or you plan to work together for the next 5-10 years, whatever it is, because the business is thriving and you
Mm,
do well in business together.
hmm.
You can keep it. There's no reason not to, you don't have to. There's no criteria that says you have to disrupt that. I think that you have to be very, very clear on the parameters around how you're operating that business. What are the income levels that each of you are going to take? What is the profit distributions? What are the roles in each of the person's position inside the business, right? What are the roles and responsibilities? You should probably have had all that stuff
You
just
should
because you're in business together, right? An
right, the
operating
right,
agreement,
right.
right?
Yes,
But not everybody does that. But
not everybody
even
does. Right, right. This feels like there's an intentionality here, right? That sort of says, this is the way we have been running the business. This is the change that we're going through. What do we want to import from the way that we've been doing things into this new paradigm? What have we been doing great?
Mhm.
What have we been maybe a little like slippery on that like probably we can't afford to continue to be slippery on? Um, and what, like how like intentionally like design it. How do we want this to go? What do we want it to look like?
And the truth of it is, you probably should be doing that anyway if your marriage is solid, right? You should have that
100%.
plan in your business anyway.
Right. And in your
Lots of,
marriage.
and in your marriage, right? Lots of business owners don't have um, that depth of operating agreement um, as tight as they should. And then when you enter divorce, it gets more complicated. And now, you probably want to also be more intentional about when are we exiting the business? What happens if I don't want to be in the business anymore? What happens if somebody dies? What happens? Are we selling it in 5 years? Are we selling it in 10 years? Are the kids going to inherit it? There's a lot of different components that, already as business owners, you should be planning and considering. But now that divorce is on the table, it's pretty important that you bring those things out and and evaluate them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's like the easy one,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So what happens when there's been financial infidelity? There has been a mismanagement of the business.
Mm-hmm.
Or, right, part of the divorce is about the fact that like we cannot
Continue.
cooperate in any way, shape, or form, business or personal. What happens to the business then? What?
Well, I think again it goes back to what is the current ownership of it? You know, is it 50-50, or is
Mhm.
one party really running it and the other is working part-time in it or supporting it? Um, and what's the depth of the financial infidelity? So you may need to involve a forensic accountant to kind of
Mhm.
trail and really understand what the value of the business, what the value of the distributions from the business for the family household or for that individual are. So you really have a serious and real value, tangible value to
Right.
deal with, right? Because your tax reporting, what you pay on your taxes versus what your business generates in terms of revenue are two different things. Not that you're cheating, but that you're tax deducting everything that you possibly can. That's what we do. That's what your tax accountant is supposed to do. They're supposed to make sure you get every available and legal tax deduction strategy for your benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if I'm going to buy your business, I want to know what kind of benefit were you getting out of the business? Not just, what kind of revenue, what kind of payroll were you on? What kind of distributions? Did you have a car? Do you put your
Mm-hmm.
gas? Do you put other things on the business? That's really the number that I want to know. And that's a multiple that I would use to value your business. So you'll want to get to
Right.
that too.
Right. Right. I mean, I'm assuming a business is similar to a home, which is that if you got to figure out who's keeping it,
Yep.
right? If you cannot continue to run it uh, together, then you are deciding who is going to keep it, and one person has to buy the other person out
Yep.
based on the current value. So you have to have it appraised in some way or valued in some way. I mean, is a business basically just, it's the same as all the other
It's an
stuff, right?
asset.
It's
It's
an
an
asset
asset
or not, right? And so,
or a
right,
liability.
right. If I'm going to keep the business, I may have to, you may have to give me money to take it off your hands if it's in the hole, right?
Well, let's hope that if it's in the hole, we just let you have it. But we've verified first that,
Yeah,
you're not really getting more money out of it that we don't know about. So that's where you may need if particularly if there's financial infidelity, you want to have a really strong understanding of cash flows and where the money is going inside of that
right.
business.
Right. And so these are all the financial disclosures that would have to be done inside of the divorce, right? And
Yes.
inside of the valuation of the business and getting
Right.
that assessed. Um, I'm thinking of a client who has been running a business with her spouse for many, many years, and he has essentially driven it into the ground.
Mm.
It was very successful. It was, they're sort of pillars of the community, very sort of central to the community. Um, but he has mismanaged it, not just the finances, but actually the staff. Morale is really low. People are scared of him. Like all the reasons that she's divorcing him are the reasons, are ways that he has impacted the business as well. Um, and I feel like she's considering continuing to run the business with him, or
Oh,
like I mean, I think from an HR perspective, she has to get him out, but also like it's in such a mess right now, right? How do you determine like, okay, I'm going to keep this thing that I've been running with somebody else. I don't do what he does, right? Does she now have to hire someone to do what he does? And then it costs her more money. And then they're like, what? it's it's such a mess. It's so
It is. It
complicated.
is. It sounds like the perfect storm. I mean, just
Hmm.
from the little bit that you're telling me, I would be inclined to value the business from where it is now in the downturn, right? So it's not worth as much because he's disrupted it, and that can be a factor in valuing it at a lower level because he has in fact negatively impacted the business. I would boot him out of the business and not have him involved because of that.
Sure.
And yes, you're if he has a particular set of skills, the stuff that he was doing that worked, right? Then you're going to have to
Right.
hire out for that if you don't have that particular skill
Hmm.
set yourself. In life and business, we divide and conquer. So it might not be your natural space. You may need to hire for that, but you don't necessarily have to bring on a partner. You bring on somebody who you pay to do that piece.
Right.
And now
Right.
you're in
Hmm.
control of that entity, and hopefully you're able to grow it back to where it was or beyond without that gorilla on your back that was, messing up things.
Right. And like not just like logistically messing things up, but like it's the morale and the energy and the toxicity that they infuse. And you're not, this isn't something that maybe you can recoup, right? You can't necessarily put a dollar of value on that. But I mean, you probably maybe you can, right? But
Well, do you think that the husband recognizes the damage that he's done? Or not really?
of course
Narcissist. We're
not,
dealing
right?
with a
Of course
narcissist,
not.
right?
Of course
Okay.
not.
Then yeah, then you'd have to make a case for what the value of the business is remaining. I think just like when you're in a toxic relationship and that person is no longer in your personal space and you grieve and you breathe, then
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
it's fresh air,
That's
right? I
right.
think that culture could, with that person exiting, we'll feel that fresh energy and that healthier energy, hopefully, of the remaining partner. So I don't know the valuation of the business or whether she has other assets to trade with him to get him out. But it does sound like if she has controlling interest, she may need to fire him.
Right. Yeah, that I don't know. I don't know what they're. Um, so okay. So we just did like, it's amicable, and we did it's not. Um, are there any other considerations for how things are divided that we should be
Well,
thinking of?
let's take a situation where you have a marriage and one person owns the business
Ah, yes.
and
Hmm.
you've been married for 30 years
Right.
and they grew the business from nothing. So lots of people, whoever it is, the husband or the wife who is the non-business owner, will say, well, he built it or she built it. It's not really mine. Well, I don't agree with that, you know.
Neither does the law.
Yeah,
So-
So you are entitled to half of that. You're married 30 years, more than likely you're entitled to half of that. And you're entitled to some compensation for whether it's a stream of income from that business moving forward, whether it's a buyout and you have assets that you take in terms of retirement assets or equity in the house, whatever it is, other investment assets.
Hmm.
You're just dividing those different categories and choosing what's going to make the most sense for you and whoever's left in your family, your kids, or just yourself.
How would you, so besides the value of the business, right? So you're determined
Mhm.
to have, you are entitled to half of the value of the business at the date of separation.
Yeah,
In most states, that would be
right,
how you would do it. Um, and of course, right, that value is rarely available in cash inside the business, right? So it might be a retirement account, it might be um, taken out of the house or whatever, wherever else you're going to find that money.
right.
But what is you said something about a like sort of payroll moving forward, income moving
Yeah.
forward. How,
I
how is that
mean,
how is that determined, and what would that be for? Like, is that's
I,
because it grows based on the investment that was made during the marriage?
well, I guess I kind of look at it like it's a matter of what are the total resources, right? And the business certainly is one of them. And the business is generating cash flow that's going to the household and to the marital assets and accumulating that, and the family's living on that. Um, if the value of the business and what it can generate is X, then when you're dividing assets, you're looking at what is that value of that business, right? And what piece of it. So let's say there's equity in the business of 500,000 and you're going to keep the business. So you owe me 250,000,
Right.
right? But you don't have the cash. Maybe you're going to pay me out over the
Mm,
next couple of years through cash flow. Or
I see.
we're going to swap assets. You're going to take another asset from something else. So there's more flexibility, certainly if the business is producing revenue.
Right, right. Okay, great. And I know a lot of people who are like, a lot of my clients are like, he's keeping the business and I'm keeping, my retirement. Like, we've
Yeah.
just decided, we've run the numbers loosely enough. It's, you know, um, and I mean, that seems sort of simple enough, right? Where do you see it getting kind of tripped up?
When there's not transparency, when you're
Mm,
trying to, be sketchy about how your finances look in the business, where you're not
mm,
being transparent about whether it's infidelity, financial infidelity. Um, and when there's a non-moneyed party. So if one of the people is really, hey, he handles the finances and owns the business, I handle the life and everything else with the kids and we divide and conquer. That's great, but make sure that you have advocates that are evaluating those things for you to make sure that you're getting your fair share. It
right, right,
Nothing makes me more crazy than leaving money on the table.
right. Okay, there's something that I see all the time. Okay, I mean all the time. I'm sure you do too. Which is uh spouse owns a business that has, been successful. There's been cash flow. There's, right? So they have, drawn their salary from it, supported the family or just contributed, right? Fine. As
Sure.
soon as they get divorced, the business is tanking. There's no money. I, it's not worth anything.
Actually, before they get divorced.
Well, yeah, sometimes like, I mean, I don't know, right? But like as soon as that's right, or as soon as there's separation, right?
Yeah.
Oh no,
Right.
the business isn't worth anything.
Yeah.
What do you, I mean, do you see this all the time too?
I do. It's a tough one because it could be that there's an economic shift, and that is in fact true. It could be that it's a sketchy behavior to try to protect yourself and your assets. I think that's where you do need to incorporate a forensic accountant because there may actually be money there or resources. Although people also do things like, oh, I'm not working as many hours now because I'm getting a divorce, because they're trying to bring down the numbers so
Sure.
it doesn't look as favorable, so they don't have to pay as much alimony. Unfortunately, that happens.
And do we consider that legal? Is that, I mean, I guess it's your own business. Yeah. But I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
it's sketchy.
unethical. It's
It's unethical
unethical.
and it's sketchy,
Is it
right?
legal? It's probably
It's
legal.
it's very convenient, I think is the right. Um, and I guess, when clients spouses say to them like my business is failing, like it's going under, it's so bad when it has been successful. My response is, okay, prove it. Like I like okay, if that's the case, like I got it, but like show me.
Oh yeah, it has to be demonstrated. You have to see that, you know, because of tariffs, the shipments that
Sure.
they were, happening in their business is down 25%. Okay, that's understandable if you can say there's an economic explanation for a shift in my particular style of business. But if you're an attorney and all of a sudden you're just meeting with people less frequently because either you're depressed and you're sucking your thumb, or you're structuring this so that you are making less money,
Yes, right. And then let's say it is like legit tariffs, like
yeah,
absolutely legitimate concern these days,
yeah,
right? But also hopefully not a permanent one.
yeah.
God help us. Um, so what is there a way to work that so that if it does pick back up, like, or is it like, well, we were in a recession, the value of your mortgage is
Yeah.
underwater and your house is underwater and like that's just the way it is. Bummer for you.
I think if you're selling it, certainly it is what it is. If
Sure.
you are calculating alimony off of it, you can revisit that. And you could also go back a few years to do an average. Um, um, if you're valuing your proportional piece of the business, that's going to be hard because it is what it is at the time.
Right.
So you might be better off to position it based on, hey, based on our last 10 years of marriage, this is the income that, X has been able to generate on an annualized basis. This is a blip, this is what we need in terms of alimony and child support and such.
Yeah. So base it on the income rather over time versus the value.
Yeah.
That might be a better, right, a better solution. Um, Jennifer, what are some other considerations for I don't know, if you own a business, if your spouse owns a business, if you co-own a business, are there other considerations for dividing and conquering? Anything like any like really creative solutions you've seen in the
Well, I mean, there's
past?
there's and if you are creative and open-minded, you can split things many different ways. Maybe
Mm,
there is a segment of the business that is your natural space, and you can break it apart, right, into
mm-hmm,
into
mm-hmm.
two different pieces. So, and split it up and continue operating it. Maybe you decide that it's time to hang it up, and we need to look at finding a buyer so we can get the best number for it. And that's a time frame that you really devote to, okay, how do we tighten up the business and the numbers so that we can get the best opportunity to exit, and then we're splitting that in divorce. um, again, it really goes back to that relationship and what is it and what can we work with,
Right.
and then we're navigating within that space. With your clients, if you have an irrational person, you're going to have an irrational divorce. And if you have somebody who says, "Look, I'm just not in love with you anymore," but the parent to our children, then and we're going to have to live to see each other and be in each other's lives for the next 30 years. So let's do this in a respectful way. That's a whole different story. Yeah,
Yep.
we hope for that.
Absolutely. We do hope for that. We
We don't get
do.
it often, but we hope for
Oh
it.
God, I know. I know. Um, what is your, just while I have you, when you're dealing with financial disclosures with in a divorce, right? Um, and you are noticing some avoidance. Are there financial ways or anything that you can do or say to your spouse, or that your attorney might say, or that you might say to the other party that is compelling, that it might be more compelling than you need to do this because it's the law,
Right.
or right? Like, how do you get someone who is disinclined, perhaps, to share information or just to even move the process forward? Like they're not even hiding anything.
It's tough because those people are either stuck emotionally, psychologically, or where they can't function and get it done, or they're trying to delay it because they're trying to control the environment. So if really in either situation, but definitely in the latter, you probably need your attorney.
Mm-hmm.
You need your
Mm-hmm.
attorney to compel the court to have them provide the documents.
Right,
Um,
right. Yeah. So
you
trying to avoid
can,
that, right? Like we try to avoid that
right.
at all costs, but at the end of the day, like that's the deal, right?
Right. I mean, we're supposed to be disclosing things. Usually one party is more open to do it. I mean, in an ideal world, before you're entering the divorce realm, you have an idea of what you guys have, right? You have an idea of, um, and you can get copies of your own tax returns, right, from the
Right.
IRS.
Yeah.
So you have an idea of what the household revenues are. Hopefully you have an idea of where the um, IRAs and personal assets are. The challenge these days is that all of those things are electronic. And so you may not have the passwords to all those things.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's right. And there might be a
it's,
two-factor ID on
oh
top of
yeah,
that where you're like trying not to let the cat out of the bag, but you
yep,
know, all of a sudden the cat's out of the bag.
yeah.
Um, when people come to work with you, because,
Mhm.
we have, just FYI, everybody, Jennifer and I work together. My private clients all get a session, with Jennifer, because this is an area that I am not remotely even personally good at, let alone an expert in.
You don't give yourself enough
Um,
credit.
no. Um, so, what does that look like? What does working with you look like?
Um, Thank you for asking that question. It's a great question. When I started working in the divorce world, I've been in as a financial advisor for going on 30 years. And so as an advisor, we have a process. We go through this plan and we really analyze what does the future look like and all these different things, and we need all this data. And when I'm working with somebody who's in the middle, in the trenches of a divorce, they don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to do all this future stuff. And that's not what you need right now. So
Right.
think of it like a divorce. You're coming into the ER, right? And you don't
Hmm.
need me to, ask you your family history and the whole thing. You need me
And
to deal
yet
with
they do.
the bleeding that's happening. But
And
you
yet
need me
they
to deal with
do,
the
right? Yeah.
stop the bleeding and then ask the questions, right? So it's a combination. I call it financial triage. So
Hmm.
first, we're going to just really assess what's happening. What do you have? What are the resources you have? What's going on in the divorce? What does your attorney say? Do you have a support system like a coach? All of these pieces, and then look at a strategy and then help them decide what assets do they want, really understand. Yes, I'm emotionally attached to the house because of the kids and they're young, but if I keep the house, then I have no money, no cash, and no ability to do things. I always remember this one client. She was just adamant about having the house, keeping it for the kids, and so she kept the house. He kept other assets, and he had an apartment. And almost every weekend, he could take the kids skiing. She had no extra money.
Right.
So the kids didn't want to stay home. They want to go skiing with dad.
Right.
So, it's a hard decision to make, but you really have to, and my job isn't to tell you which one's right or wrong, right? It's to tell you and help you understand the consequences of the choice you're going to make, right?
Sure.
So
Right. Run
you're going to
all the
make
numbers, run both
you're
scenarios,
yeah,
right?
what does it look like if this happens? What does it look like if you go this way? Where's the balance? And,
Hmm.
do you need to go back to school? Do you need to get a part-time job? What do things look like?
Right. Right.
So,
And one of the things I know that, I think we've talked about this before, but, that one of the things that you're assessing too is like, there's not just because there's a cash value now doesn't mean it's has the same value like over time, right? Like breaking into a retirement fund if it's $250,000 off of this and you're going to break your your a retirement fund or give them $250,000, there's a tax implication.
Sure.
There's like money over, it's amortized over a lifetime or whatever, right? How
Yes.
are those calculations that you make?
Yeah. So that's a great question because there might be personal assets or illiquid assets like the equity in your home versus an IRA that if you tap into has tax consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and or tax benefits, right? So you want to really understand all the different parts and make sure that net after tax, after so that everything is equitable, that you're getting your equitable share. So there might be a variation between, if you're keeping all the IRAs and you're keeping the personal money, right? Because I mean, I had a client not that long ago who, he's still working and he's high income earner. And she's going to get alimony and has no income because she's done work, she's retired. So he had an inherited IRA. He had to take money out every year. He gave that to her in the divorce, right? It's a to to his tax advantage and to hers, right?
Hmm.
Because her
I
tax
see.
bracket is lower. So we calculate
Right.
those
Oh,
things.
that's yeah.
We're just
Mm-hmm.
being strategic about it, right? Why waste money on tax if you can, facilitate it more
Right.
favorably?
Right. Yes. And these are things, it's like sometimes, right, we'll have clients who just like kind of just put everything in a spreadsheet, like these are all the numbers, but
Yeah.
those are not necessarily the numbers, right? And
It's a good starting point, and that's what we do. We try to, um, yes, we're gonna assess who has what, right? What's in his name, what's in her name, what's marital, what's non-marital assets. Hopefully you kept inheritances completely separate. Um,
and
and
in some
and
states like Connecticut, inheritance is not off the table. So, right, like there are, whew, there's a lot of
we're
shit going
digging
on.
there.
I have clients in Connecticut who are, a few of them where they're having to give up other things just to try to protect their inheritance because in Connecticut, it's considered
Not off
marital,
the,
not off the table, which is shitty.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
depends on what side you're on.
Well, that's true.
But generally speaking, I agree. It is shitty. Because the whole idea, to me, as a financial person, the whole idea about inheritance is that you want to keep it in the family line. Unfortunately, we're in this business, in this industry. We know that divorce happens often. And so you want to, if it came from your parents or your grandparents, you want to keep it in line so that we go to your kids, not
Right.
necessarily to your husband. Um,
Right. Right.
so that's the
And hope
reason.
and hopefully your husband also wants it to go to their
Yes,
children,
hopefully,
right? But
hopefully.
often not so much.
Yeah, often it's a negotiating point, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. What other any other considerations that we haven't touched on in terms of dividing business?
no, I think as far as I mean, there are some situations where you could say, I'm still going to own a piece of the business, but he or she's going to operate it, and I end up getting a
Mm-hmm.
profit sharing component of it. I don't really love that because you're not in control. And your asset is tied up in that business and dependent on that person.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, you know,
Right, right, right. That's
there
sort
would
of
have to be
like,
a,
yeah, that's sort of like co-owning a house. Like you're
yeah,
in ongoing business with this person that maybe
yes,
you don't want to be.
yeah. So whenever possible, in most situations, you want to try to, move on from that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Sometimes it's
some
unavoidable.
Yeah, and sometimes taking the hit is worth the freedom, you know? I mean,
Yeah,
we don't want people taking a massive hit, but sometimes if you're weighing something financial and something emotional, like they don't necessarily The
Yeah.
financial does not necessarily outweigh the emotional and psychological separation.
Absolutely. We see it all the time with people who say, "Oh, I want to pay off my mortgage." And I said, "Well, you really, you know, your interest rate is low. It doesn't, you don't need to do that." And they say, "I'll sleep better at night." So the little incremental difference that you would have made in your investments is definitely worth the sleep at night factor,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that goes exactly the same as what you're saying. The sleep at night factor, the psychological factor may be more important than, you know, 50, 100 grand, whatever it is.
Right. Exactly.
Hopefully
Exactly.
not a million. Let's not do that.
Let's not do that. Yeah. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming back on. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you. Where can everybody find you?
So I always like to say if we intrigued you and left you hanging with something that we didn't answer, you can reach out to me on my Calendly. I'm happy to take a squeeze the juice call and answer your question. It's Jennifer Modern Wealth is my Calendly, and my website is modern-wealth.com.
Yep. And like I said, if you sign up for private coaching with me, you get a free call with Jennifer, but you can also pay for her time separate separate from me.
Best
But
to
we
get all of your resources lined up,
I
right?
mean, 100%. I listen, it's the team approach that is the most effective, as we well know. So
For sure.
thanks so much, Jennifer.
Thank you, Kate.